Welcome everybody to our last module of Forsa School, sadly, for this year. My name is Nahla Tabba. I'm one of the co-founders of Forsa School, along with Sharjah Art Foundation and Rania Jishi from Naqd. So we established the school as a way to respond to these difficult times, but really arm creative professionals with everything they need to get through their careers. And we have with us Toleen Badawi, and Toleen Badawi has had 12 years of corporate marketing experience, but from 2013, she has been a coach for individuals and executives in various transitions in their careers. So thinking about people who want to become leaders within an organization or personally speaking. And of course, it made a lot of sense for us to invite Toleen over to speak about a couple of things, mainly the general sentiment around 2020 and 2021 when it comes to our own practices, our jobs, our careers, our value systems, our definitions of success, but also what it has meant in terms of our psyche and our ability to keep going given these times. So really, Toleen, thank you so much for being here and welcome.
Thank you so much. It actually is very, very exciting to be here today.
We're happy to have you. And to the audience who are here, please, if you have any questions, just drop them into the Q&A section or the chat section. We will address them towards the end of this webinar. Thank you.
Great. All right. So I think what I'll do is I'll share in my screen so we can get started with our topic. And let me do this. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining in today. Today we're really going to be talking about a topic that I am very passionate about in essence. And I think we've all experienced failures in multiple ways and in multiple capacities. So if we can maybe get the audience to share with us, I do want to ask, I am quite interested to know, what is your biggest failure? Is this something that you guys can tell me about? Is this something that I'd love to hear it. If somebody can, volunteer.
Not starting.
Not starting. Okay. Yeah. Can you explain a little bit more what you mean by not starting?
Michael, is it perhaps something related to a project that you never got to start? There's another one coming in, not making a resolved artwork as a student. So not completing work, so not starting and not completing.
Okay, not starting and not completing. Okay, great. And why did you see it as a failure?
So we have another one, not following my dreams, feeling like I'm too old to start.
Okay. And is it being old that made you believe or feel like it's a failure?
Feel free to jump in and respond.
Okay.
So, Toleen, do you have the web chat?
I think I'm trying to see. This is the chat, yeah? Okay, so here it is. All right. Not starting, not making a resolve. Okay, because I worked very hard. I was challenged to make a resolved work in my third year for my pre-thesis. Yes, I feel like it's too late. You know, these are all great answers. Now, I wanna share with you, if I may. I'm going to share with you one of what I believe is my biggest failures. Okay, and one of my biggest failures was I had a meeting with what we would call a big fish, right? And that was only a couple of years ago. And I thought I had this. I thought I was going to get this client. I thought there was no way out. There was no way I wasn't gonna get it. I had an insider and all of that. I walked in and I believed I was prepared. Okay. So when I walked in there, my contact comes up to me and he was like, all right, Toleen, I'm going to take you to the conference room so you can set up. So as he's walking, I grab him by the hand. I'm like, hang on. What do you mean set up? What am I exactly setting up? He's like, oh, you set up your presentation. I'm like, what presentation? So he's like, you're coming to present your company to us. And immediately I felt like somebody just I shot myself in the foot because I had no presentation. I believed that I was going to come in with my wits and my charm and like how I've done it with all other prospects. And lo and behold, I literally could not really say much. And I saw myself stumbling into this meeting and without anyone telling me, it was a complete bust. And I walked away knowing that I completely failed. Now, like many people, that we all experience some form of failure. Some believe it's too late to have started. Others believe that they couldn't even get started with something. Others not finishing something. And in many cases, when it comes to failure, it talks about an emotion and a value that we connect with, right? That's the idea. And I think, Nahla, earlier you've mentioned something about how 2020 came in and changed a lot of things for us. Now that is true. And in fact, we have all these cliche sayings. It's like the only constant thing in life is change. These are all cliches that we hear them, we connect with them, they resonate with us, but somehow we still have this mindset that we cannot fail, things cannot change. We cannot see things moving in a different direction. And the minute we see that happen, it's almost like we get caught, like a deer got caught in a headlight. So this initially is the reason why we talk about failure. I know I've, throughout my experience as myself in the corporate world, as a coach with my clients, failure is the one conversation that becomes extremely difficult for us to have, because everybody believes that failure we're not allowed to fail, right? We're not. Now, take that for just a minute and put that aside just for a second, because now I want to look at its counterpart, right? Because right now we always think it's either we fail or we succeed, right? So what I want to do now is I want to create some form of comparative, just to understand a little bit the mindset of the audience that I'm with. If I were to ask you the same question, what is your biggest success? What would you tell me? Okay, so
Making my parents proud.
Sorry, making my parents proud. Okay, tough question. Tough questions. Are you saying that the questions I'm asking are tough, or is okay? My apologies, but you know what? It's okay. It's okay for us it's okay for us to engage in tough questions, because it's once we engage in them, we become a lot more prepared for what's to come. So making my parents proud. What else? What else would be considered a success?
I would say maybe being able to start something at a time of adversity.
Right, absolutely.
Pivoting.
I didn't hear that. You cut out. Say that again, Nahla.
Pivoting.
Yeah.
Just being able to transition.
Definitely. I think it's difficult to own our successes when we are weighed down with the yoke of a major failure. Look, I can completely appreciate that. Getting through 2020, yes, and it being okay. Absolutely. Oh my God, that is a huge success for sure. Dreaming about something and achieving it, definitely. Finding confidence in my work, even on bad days. Oh my God, it's funny enough, it's sometimes a lot easier for us to talk about our successes because they lift us up, right? But if I were to ask you about some of these questions, getting through 2020, how many failures were in that 2020 before we got through it? How many setbacks did we experience in 2020 before we got through it and said, okay, we're still all in one piece, still intact. That was, and we're still relatively okay, dreaming about something and achieving it. I'm curious to know, when we dream about something and we work towards acquiring that and going after that achievement, that dream, I am certain that there are obstacles. I am certain that there are hiccups. I am certain that there are moments of where we feel like, oh, maybe I should just give up, right? But these are what you built on to get to that dream being achieved. And finding confidence in my work, even on bad days. Imagine that. And now we say, okay, so having said that, I did make a list of failures and successes in 2020, and okay, great. And the successes list was way longer. Check that out. You're way ahead of our game. That's amazing. That is amazing. So check it out. So why is it a success then? If we sit there and we talk about these, why is this a success? Is it because we saw the finish line? Is it because we finally got what we wanted? See, when we start to ask ourselves these questions, when we look at something knowing that if we take this project and we take whatever endeavor we were in, whatever that endeavor that we're in order for you to decide that it was a success, I wonder how many days, how many times did you look back and feel the heaviness of failure? Quitting my job in sales, very well paid, to join the arts and culture industry, started from scratch in my early 30s. Oh my God, yes, well done. Check that out. It's quite amazing. And you know what? Here I am coming in, and I was excited to have this conversation, and I'm even that much more excited to have it today because I'm seeing, look at the successes that you guys are doing, and you see why it's a success. Now, I'm just curious. Okay, Roxanne, I think it's Roxana, right? If I hope I said the name right. Quitting my job in sales, very well paid. I wonder who stood in your way and said, are you sure this is a good idea? And the days that maybe you didn't actually, get what you wanted, did it make you reflect back and wonder, was it the right decision? Was it the right thing to do? See, these are questions that we ask because we have this attachment to an idea, to a thought of what a path ought to look like. We're all very excited. We're always very motivated, very inspired, and very excited to start something. I know for a fact everybody will laugh. Everybody will laugh at me. Will laugh at me when I tell them I opened my business when the whole world shut down. The first day I opened my business was March 25th. And if everybody recalls, I think it was March 22nd that we locked down in Dubai. But that, and yes, it was days of despair where I'm thinking, oh my God, what was I thinking? Should I have done this? Should I be looking for a job? What should I be doing? Should I go back? Should I not? And all these questions. Now, this is a question that I really want to ask, because this takes me to the next point that I have. How did you celebrate your successes? But I mean in a solo. How did you celebrate your success? And did you, in fact, celebrate your success?
I actually think this is probably one of the biggest problems, particularly with last year. It was such a rush and a scramble to get so much done that the idea of just celebrating or thanking or, reflecting even for a moment was incredibly hard, especially if measured against tools like how much did you make in revenue? How what are the markers of that? So
Absolutely. Absolutely. It wasn't easy. In fact, I think more, if we were to talk about 2020 specifically, right? If we were to just talk about that bubble that we, kind of the pandemic and the new normal that we experienced. The, interestingly enough, everything that we knew and everything that we could have measured ourselves against kind of got tossed out the window. And we had no idea what we could do to overcome this. And this is possibly one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation about how to improve our relationship with failure. Because, if we reflect back on 2020, I'm not going to sit there and I'm not going to talk about it from a philosophical, from an existential point of view and whatnot. But in reality, what happened, it allowed us to sit there, it allowed us to sit there and reflect back on ourselves. And I know some of us, for example, questioned how they've managed their life before 2020. None of us was really prepared for 2020. Some of us, yes, some of us looked back and said, if only I had a much better savings. Others said, oh my God, if only I had started saving. Others would have, held on to a job that is barely paying anything, just because to them that was literally the raft that was going to carry them through the corona or the COVID wave, right? Others wondered what they're supposed to do. Some of us wondered if they were even in the right industry, because we started to see the importance of doctors and nurses and whatnot. And, some of us didn't feel like, but what can we do to sustain ourselves and sustain the world? So that in itself, is a huge obstacle, is a huge pit stop where it actually screeched us to a halt to stop and wonder and question. And if we don't have a good mindset towards failure, chances are we struggle to answer that question. Quite often we did. And even the best of us, those that have the best relationship with failures, in fact, must have struggled. They probably just lasted a little bit less time. They spent less time doing that. Nope, never celebrated much. Occasionally would throw a party for my friends when crits go well at school, but most of time I don't let myself feel as I deserve a celebration, because as an artist, I'm not ever satisfied with my work. Okay. That almost dips right into the heart of the next point. I try to take a moment and go through what happened and how proud I am about doing all of that. That's amazing if you could do that. It's quite interesting, because I know, and you know what? And here's the thing. When you're saying I don't celebrate much, I may throw a party or a celebration for somebody else, but I myself am not satisfied. Why is that? Why is it that we don't celebrate? Is it because we haven't gotten the big fish yet? Is it because we haven't gotten the big win yet? See, I didn't actually celebrate because I was too eager and determined to constantly prove myself. Therefore, I never took a moment to celebrate. Well, let me tell you something. And this is the reality. Okay, so if we do not celebrate the little wins, it becomes much more difficult for us to see the big wins. That is the rule of life. That is genuinely the rule of life. Because if we constantly feel like, no, it's the next one that I need, it has to be bigger. It's not big enough. It's not satisfactory enough. All of that. The idea is, you're still waiting for something that's bigger. But what you're not noticing is that you're moving from one success to the biggest, to a bigger success, to a bigger success, to a bigger success, and you're not seeing that. It's important, in fact, to celebrate. Yes, I agree. The idea of deserving a success is a strong one. Sometimes you don't celebrate because you think it will make you complacent. In fact, in fact, I have to tell you this. It makes me wonder how many here feels like an imposter. How many here struggles from an imposter syndrome? Or feel like they struggle from that? Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely, it's real. Did you ever ask yourself the question of, like we say, this, no, this is not enough. I feel like I must not fail. I feel like I'm a fake. It was luck. Or when somebody, oh, it's no big deal. Anybody else can do it, right? It's like when somebody comes to you, it's like, wow, you're so good at this. And you're like, really, no, yeah, I don't, or yes, I don't deserve it. I don't deserve to be here. Definitely. People think I have it all figured out, but I don't. Absolutely. And we're going to talk about that. And if you join me tomorrow, we're even going to discuss it in a bit more details to talk about what to do with that. But if I were to give you a couple of tips on how to minimize the feeling and the discomfort of imposter syndrome, I would say, put an inventory of progress. Write down your inventory of progress. Sit and write everything, and it could be the smallest to the biggest. So it could be the smallest to the biggest. Yes, it doesn't, and don't skip on anything. So write everything that you've done. You could start from graduating from high school, making it through high school, having good friends, getting my first job, getting, having certifications, having, in your cases, if you're artists, having your art being displayed. I don't care where it is. Even if it was displayed on your mom's panel, that's fine. The idea behind it is I want you to write down all your progress, all your wins, big and small, because this is one of the biggest steps of how you start to develop your palette for celebration, your palette for success. So this is one of those things that we say. Okay, so Michael was saying, because you're creative, it somewhat feels like a gift, so you don't realize you're talented. Okay, as you don't have to work at it and make you feel like anyone can do it, but it's not true. Yes. And when you do a career shift, you're automatically an imposter at some level because it takes time to catch up. Yes, absolutely. This is why. And I understand that. I could really empathize. I know what you mean. I changed my career twice so far. So this is one, and probably I say 2.5 times, but yes, twice for sure, twice officially. Right. And yes, of course, in the beginning, when you start, especially if you're facing people and you have to be there for people, whatnot, you do have to stop and say, do I really know what I know? I studied it, I learned it, whatnot. I'm talented. Yes, there's a talent, but because it comes so naturally to you, you feel like it's easy. Anyone can do it. Now, in order for us to overcome imposter syndrome, it really does boil down to the idea of how do we look at wins, how do we look at successes, and what does our relationship with failure look like? Okay, so these are three major things. In fact, one of the things I would encourage you to do, and you'll be quite surprised at the responses you would get, is seek feedback. Go on an exercise where you get feedback from those around you, those that you've done work with, those that you have as friends, those that you have in your life. Ask them to give you genuine, constructive feedback. Not the whole "you're amazing" and "you're fantastic." No, ask them to give you feedback, but don't just ask for feedback that is, tell me what you think about me. Ask about possibly, how did I inspire you? What were the things that if I asked you about an area of development that I need to work on, what would it be? What do you think are my biggest strengths? So you're asking for the positives, but you're asking for the negatives, because in order for you to develop, you need to know what you need to work on. So remember, yes.
Toleen, Thank you so much for recommending that I do that during our coaching session, because
Yes.
that was actually one of the toughest exercises and something that I was resisting a lot. But it's this idea of, yeah, speak to your ex-bosses, your colleagues, clients, and truly, absolutely find out where you are coming from, because what you might see as this huge failure that's been exaggerated in your head is, as Toleen was saying, a nugget of information that could help you improve and also weigh out, or kind of put it there against all your other successes as well, and realize that
Yeah.
you did a great job anyway.
100%, 100%. The thing is, to be frank with you, I get very irritated when I ask somebody, like when I do a training and I ask someone for feedback and they come back to me with like, oh, it was so amazing. Is there anything you would change about it? Nothing. Okay, what can I do to fix? Nothing. Or they would skip that, because I know that I'm not perfect, and I work equally hard like everybody else at the idea of demolishing this mentality of I have to be perfect and I have to be perfect all the time. So the idea when somebody tells me no, it was perfect, it kind of for me now is starting to become like, but this is against my values. Nothing is perfect. There must be something that is not, that is not okay, that I can modify. So in order for us to overcome this, in order for us to appreciate what we do in the here and the now, you have to remember one thing. You have to remember, it's not about how good you are, it's about how good you want to be, creating that momentum. In fact, I'm going to tell you the story, and I'm sure a lot of you know the story. There's a story, it's the Thomas Edison story of how he invented the light bulb. Now I'm going to use the 1,000 time that it took him 1,000 time to invent the light bulb. Now Thomas Edison sat there and tried 1,000 times before he finally managed to invent the light bulb. And we're so glad that he did, because otherwise we probably would have to, we would probably still be on candles. I know I'm exaggerating, but theoretically. So when he finally did this, a journalist approached him and said, Mr. Edison, how does it feel to have failed 1,000 times? And he said, I did not fail 1,000 times. The light bulb is a 1,001 step invention. Now, think about that. How could, if somebody like Thomas Edison, if he was this person that felt like he could not do it, if his mindset and his opinion and his belief about failure is that it is a failure, is that I am a failure, how many times would he have tried before he would have said, you know what, I really don't think there's such a thing as a light bulb. I'm not sure this is going to work. What, he would have tried 30 times, 40 times, 100 times? Let's say he was really patient and tried 200 times. I'm thinking he probably would have stopped at some point, but he kept at it. And in his mind, he was not failing. And when he says it's a 1,001 step invention, what he was doing every single time, he was doing something. He wasn't doing the same thing over and over again. What he was doing, he was doing the experiment. He would gain feedback from that experiment. He would extract data that he can take that would help him move up the ladder of the invention. This is very, very important. That's why I invite you today to befriend failure. I invite you today to remove the scarlet letter off of failure. There is no shame in failing. You are not failing. What you're doing might have a setback. What you're doing might possibly be failing, but it's only because you have not also embraced the term yet. See, I was reading, I was watching this video by Carol Dweck, who has written the book Mindset. It talks about growth mindset, and I would really highly recommend this book. And she was talking that at one of the schools, what they were doing when they would have exams, and what they would do is that if somebody passed, they would give them their passing grade. But if somebody failed, they would say, not yet. imagine the idea of not yet. See the way, I suspect, because you guys are, you know, all in the art field, I suspect you'll see the visual that I'm about to present you with. See, when we come across a failure, an obstacle, a setback, a lot of the times we might find ourselves that we are at the end of a road. Okay, we might see that that's it. There's really not much, there's no more to go. But the minute you say, I'm not there yet, imagine what happens. Imagine that end of the road is actually a bend in the road. And all it really, by you saying yet, it's you saying, hang on a second, I feel like there's something there. And you push your head forward and you see, look, there's more road for me to travel on this path till I get to where I need to get. So the idea of removing the shame off of failure. There is no shame in failing. The only shame is, and there is no shame. I hate the word shame, but it's like the whole idea. It's a pity to not even start or to stop something because we were afraid that we're going to look less than less polished. So adopt the Edison approach. Remember that everything is a 1,001 step process. You yourself are a 1,000 step invention. You constantly move forward. Of course, I completely appreciate the idea of being afraid of success. I completely appreciate that. You know, and Michael, please tell me if I've understood you correctly, because I've had clients of mine that initially we start off and they tell me that I'm afraid to fail because it's going to make me look bad in front of everybody. But then I realize that actually people sometimes are afraid of success because it means that they have to elevate. Once they succeed, it means that they have to constantly operate on this higher platform. But yes, being held accountable, exactly that, absolutely. And you have to do it, yes, better and whatnot. I get that. But again, this is the idea of having to be perfect, of not being able to fail. How many times did Steve Jobs fail? How many times did Picasso probably failed? How many times did Michael Jordan fail? Everybody, all the successors, they all fail. And in fact, this is something that I was talking to myself, because apparently I've become really good at it because I always talk to my laptop. It's becoming my best friend. So when it comes to success, you cannot really talk about success unless the concept is complete and closed and sealed. So if you're talking about yourself as a success, well, we can't judge that today, we can't judge that tomorrow. You will constantly be a work in progress. So yes, some days will be good, some days will be bad. Some endeavors you're going to approach and you're going to take on are going to give you great results, and others are going to be, they're going to topple all over. And that is the beauty of life. That is why success really gets judged all the way at the end, when you're like, all right, so this is it, we're done, okay, this is it, it's a wrap, everybody, and now you retire, you live your life, and you realize, when you reflect back, you're like, I lived the life I wanted. That's a success. I lived it on my terms. That's a success. I don't regret. I have no regrets for not trying. Usually people don't. When they reflect on their life, they regret the things that they haven't tried, that they were afraid to take on, not the things that they've tried. Actually, there is this thing, as we grow older and we reflect back, we start to adopt the idea of, you know what? I know it didn't work out, but at least I tried it. Now I know. See,
Roxana actually put a really nice quote. The difference between a master and a beginner is that the master has failed more times than the beginner has even tried.
100%, 100%. 100%. And we've got, I think the shame we put on ourselves comes from the finite sense of time, and that things have to happen at certain times. Absolutely. But who said that we have to do that? Exactly who was it that told us that? Today, I invite you, in fact, to to embark on a journey with yourself by renewing the values that you have, that you live by today, because these values possibly are quite outdated. Because these values inspire our beliefs and our way of thinking and whatnot. They are the ones that basically, generate the thought that things have to happen at a certain time. Things need to be finished at a certain time. You're supposed to finish school by the time you're 18, 19, and 19 is a bit late. You're supposed to go to college right immediately. So those that don't go to college, well, they've shot themselves in the foot already, so early in their life. Then after that, you're supposed to get married, and you're supposed to get you're supposed to get a job first. Then you're supposed to get married, and then you're supposed to have kids, and then your kids are supposed to go to school. They all have to be with, they have to have great degrees, and if they don't, then it's your failure that they didn't. See that? It's like somebody just sat there and gave the rest of the world the map to what they wanted their life to be. And we just assumed that this is what we need to follow through. We have this question: is success really only a feeling we have about ourselves? Is it not the result of an interaction with others? You can do that, but then you're putting your faith in someone else's mind, in someone else's opinion. See, if my success has to be a comparative to what I bench myself against, what I decide. That's why I said, how do you define success? How do you define success? You need to define success, because it's only once you know what your definition of success, what your benchmark is, can you then reflect back and say, yes, I did better. I met expectations, or I did not. If you're going to see what your interaction with other people are going to be like, then you're being judged based on what we call in the business on their model of the world, based on their definitions, based on their opinion. So for example, if you are in the art industry and the people, maybe those that matter to you the most, don't believe in art and don't believe that art is a business. And excuse me, I'm sorry to bring something so maybe strong, but if somebody comes to you and says, art is not a degree, art is not something, art is a hobby, okay, but yet you're making a living out of it, you've already failed in their mind. So are you going to measure it against that? And yes, I understand possibly what you're referring to is how people are going to refer to your work, especially if you're in the art. You need that public. You need the critique. You need people to basically give you that feedback that your work is great. And if it's something that's up for sale, the more sales you make, possibly it's almost like a direct correlation with success. But that is like, that's mathematics. That's just like one aspect, one very small aspect of what success would be. That's why I would encourage you to define what success is. I would encourage you to define what failure is to yourself, what matters to you. Because at the end of the day, like I always tell every single client of mine and every person in my life, they've probably heard me say that, you need to live life on your own terms, because I can sit there and I can bombard you with my ideas, my ideologies, my philosophies, my beliefs, my value system. But then the minute I close my door, I live my life as I want, and I leave you to live your life as you want. And you're left with what you believe is right for you. So if you're going to live based on somebody else's terms, you kind of need to make sure that they are also your own, because that will leave a lot of gap for unlived lives, and then a lot of regret and a lot of remorse and a lot of reflecting back and saying, no, I didn't live the life that I wanted for myself. So I would advise, as much as you can, I know there's always an element of that, of course, we all need and love to be validated by the external world, but I would advise against it being our core measure and our core beacon of what success, whether we've succeeded or not. Okay, so
There's
this
also,
is
Toleen,
yeah.
the fact that there are so many options and alternative routes as well. So, for example, if we're going to take an artist's career, there's so many ways an artist can, land themselves success. And it's no longer just that one exhibition or that one sale, but a whole breadth of ways.
Yeah.
You can take on a residency, you can get a grant for research, you end up publishing your work in different ways. And so I think with every institution out there that has been a beacon of success, you really need to sit and critically unpack it and dissolve it.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think it's very, very, and that's why it's so important that before you embark on a mindset or an idea, you want to define it for yourself. So like what you said, Nahla, the idea of, there are so many different ways of being successful, then you have to decide what works for you. You need to create that roadmap. You need to create that blueprint that you have, that is yours and yours only, that aligns your own expectations with what you need to achieve. And that blueprint then becomes your roadmap, because it really drowns out the noise that you might hear and you might be bombarded with from the world outside. Okay, so keep that in mind, because one thing I love to bring forward is the idea of the inner critic, because our inner critic is the best at coming at you at the worst of times, basically telling you where you failed, what you haven't done right, and why you don't deserve to be successful, and interestingly enough, as loud as that inner critic is, it can list 100 lists for you as to why you shouldn't be doing something. But if you listen carefully, that inner champion of yours, all it needs to do, it gives you one thing. It'll tell you because you really want to. And then you'll find yourself pushing yourself just one more step forward. And that voice, I work really hard on developing in people, because and I'll tell you how I develop it, because in case we don't cross paths or whatnot, but I develop it with people and within myself with two things. I increase my emotional intelligence, and I develop a true growth mindset. Okay. A true growth mindset, if you adopt a true growth mindset, you will never see failure the way that you saw it before. You'll see it as challenges, and you see it that you'll always be capable of overcoming, because you won't even look at failure as failure. Say, okay, so this is a good lesson to learn, and you'll take the feedback and you'll apply it into your life, and you'll move on, and you'll even be able to deal with successes also in a better way, because you recognize that you're smart and you can always get smarter. Okay, that's the idea. It's like, so you're not just, so I love, so you're not just been given this amount of smarts in life and that's it, and you have to deal with it. You recognize that this can be filled and refilled, and guess what? I can even change the container to bring a bigger container, because that's what I am. As long as I learn, as long as I develop, as long as I improve, I'll always be met with new challenges. And then when setbacks come in, we'll welcome them, because it's fine, because they're just part of the learning process. So what I would recommend that I do, because I'm also conscious of the time.
Can you just tell us what the emotional intelligence part would be? Is
Yes.
that kind of sitting with your emotions when you feel these things and being kinder?
It's not just that. Emotional intelligence is basically utilizing your emotions in better decision making, in how you look at things. Imagine yourself, if you look at yourself from when you're making decisions, if you are in the mood, or you've been given a really good news, so you're feeling really light and over the moon. When somebody asks you to make a decision on something, chances are you'll make a decision a lot easier, right? Now, let's say somebody just given you really bad feedback, and you're feeling really down on yourself, and you're really feeling very critical of yourself, and you're asked to make a decision, chances are you're going to make it from a different perspective. It's looking at your emotions as a language that you need to acquire. In fact, where is my beautiful, where are you? Oh my God, where is it? Here it is. It's becoming comfortable with what we call the wheel of emotions, right? It's recognizing what I'm feeling and why I'm feeling this way. So the more I can label the emotion that I have, the more likely I can recognize what I'm going through, hence modify my mindset and the way that I see, because emotions, they guide our thoughts and our beliefs. Okay, they are the core, and the more the more we recognize that, the more we allow our emotions to come out without really judging it as being good or bad, right? We just look at it as, this is, I'm feeling this way, there's data in that information, right? I can then get myself out of a negative mindset into a positive mindset. I can recognize that I need to make a better decision, therefore the quality of my thinking needs to be better. And then I'll know, for example, if I'm feeling angry because of something, I might realize this is not the right time for me. This is not the right time for me to make this decision. I need to step back. So it's an intelligent use of your emotions, right? It's allowing yourself to be proactive about your emotions and not being governed and ruled by your emotions. It's a completely different dynamic altogether. Does that kind of explain it? Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Fantastic. So when we look at success, we look at I look at it in those in a pace in a pace formula, if you want to call it. So what I do is I give myself permission to be flawed. And this is the permission aspect. The first thing you want to do is really give yourself permission. It's like, give yourself permission to feel. Give yourself permission to feel something without judging it. Okay? Give yourself permission to be flawed without judging it. Recognize that you are who you are, and that's okay, right? And that permission gives you the next step, which is then once you give permission to be flawed, you accept yourself for who you are, because now you embrace these flaws. But you don't embrace them because you want to be complacent. You embrace them because you know once you accept them, only then can you change them. You can't change something you're not aware of. You can't change something you don't accept. So if you're somebody who is on the path of being healthy or being more fit, you're not going to go on the path of being healthier and more fit unless you've recognized that you're probably not eating as healthy as you should and you're not as fit as you should. So you accept that and then you create the change. Okay, so permission to be flawed, because it's okay. We're not there to judge ourselves. Then accept it. Then you take that choice. You choose how you want to do it, and that this choice factor is very important. In fact, I believe it's quite important because no one can really choose for you what to do. I can sit there and I can tell you, oh, I think you should really do this, and I think you should really be you should embark on a really healthy lifestyle. You should really be more fit. And I can give you all of it, all the proof and the evidence of why you should do what you should do, right? But you have to make that choice. And you have to embrace the paradigm that you are a product of your choices. Again, product of your choices is also owning our emotions. It's also owning the flaws that we have. It's recognizing that a lot of the choices I made were not really the best choices for me. And I get that. And they weren't great. But you know what? I am a product of that. And now if I want to have a different way of life, notice I'm not judging how my life is going to be. But if I want to take my life in a different path, then I need to make different choices. I don't want to be a product of the circumstances. I don't want to be a slave to the external, to what I cannot control. I cannot control people's opinion of me. I cannot control the circumstances, but I can control how I choose to be. Once you do that, then you put in the effort. And to put in the effort, you adopt the mindset that I will be a lifelong learner. And a lifelong learner is somebody who recognizes, and imagine, check this out. A lifelong learner will somehow overcome the imposter syndrome, will be okay with failure, and will stop and acknowledge his successes. Why? Because they know that there are things that they know. So they have to acknowledge that they're learning, which means they have to know things, right? Which means they're going up in life. They are okay with failure because it's a setback, but that just means they need to learn a little bit more. And as an imposter, the minute if you struggle with imposter syndrome, as you look at those two components, immediately you stop worrying about the idea of having to be perfect or you don't deserve what you don't know, because you've worked hard, because there's effort that's put in there. So pace yourself through success, pace yourself through life, give yourself permission, accept who you are, choose what you want to do, and put in the effort for it. It's not the idea of saying I have to be this. This is the frame that I'm going to be in. This is who I have to be. And if anything outside of that parameter and that frame, then I failed. Like I said, a lot of the times we struggle, especially one thing I probably share with you guys is the idea of many of you probably work alone or work with, you might not be, I don't know if you guys have jobs or you work separately, but I know many of you are either freelancers or entrepreneurs or whatnot. I myself am an entrepreneur, and that entrepreneurship mindset is a mindset that embraces the idea of it's not always going to be okay. It's not always going to be right. I'm not always going to get it right. And sometimes I'm going to make decisions that are not going to be the most ideal. You can sit there and beat yourself up for it, or you can say, all right, so this happened. What can I do with it? What I can do with it? If I have to give you, if I'm allowed, if I give myself permission to give you advice, I would say, please, 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 please do not let a failure go unlearned from.
Yeah.
Just that would be the thing. Don't waste a good learning opportunity just because it hurts. Failure is meant to hurt. It's meant to hurt. It's meant to leave you beaten up. It's meant to leave you sore. It's meant to leave those impact on you. But don't worry about that. Look at the strength that you're developing from that and focus on the lesson learned, because from experience, I have noticed that when we fail and we don't focus on the lesson learned from that failure, guess what? It repeats itself somehow in the future. And it keeps doing that until we stop and say, all right, so what is exactly that? What is it that I'm supposed to learn from here, right? And only when can we do this, can we learn, and then it disembarks and leaves us, and then we go on to different, to different ventures and endeavors and whatnot. Thank you so much for your time, and please, I would love to hear more from you. I'd love to get, if there are any more questions, you're welcome to ask me any question.
Toleen, I've shared the link with the handouts that I shared earlier. Can you tell us a little bit more about what they are?
Yes. So there is the handout that says improving your relationship with failure. It just basically takes you, to some steps, some actual exercises that you want to do when it comes to creating a blueprint for your achievement. Possibly, if you can, I would recommend that you do what we call a wheel of life or a life audit, and it's based on 8 areas of your life. I've mentioned them, and just subjectively, from your perspective, how satisfied are you in those areas? And like from a 1 to 10, anything that is less than a 6, or anything that you really feel like is a priority in your life but you're not giving it that attention, I would recommend and highly recommend that you put a goal towards it. Once you've created that, I would again create maybe develop a creative blueprint of how you want to move your life forward. Allow that roadmap to be your guide in how you want 2021, for example, to be. Okay, so this would be it. The other thing is what I did as well is here, you'll see those 4 areas. These are the main things I would say if you want to embark on, discovering more. discover more learn more about emotional intelligence, learn more about growth mindset. The Wheel of Life is always a good exercise to have constantly. Every few months, do it and look at how you've progressed, because that's a good progress measure. And create a blueprint. So this is your handout as of for today. The other one is a letting go exercise. Now, the letting go exercise in itself, it really takes you through. It takes you through the steps. But what I'd like you to do, for if you're going to, use it as from today on, I would recommend that you use it as, how am I going to let go of the current mindset that I have about being perfect, about failure, about being, feeling like an imposter, about celebrating my successes. Focus on those 4 areas. So what is it that you're going to do to help you let go of that shackle, if I have permission to say that. So those are the 2 exercises that I've given. Always keep a blank copy with you, and the letting go exercise is a great exercise. Every time you feel like you're dwelling on something, use it and reuse it.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Toleen, for this.
My
This
pleasure.
was brilliant. If you have friends or other people you would have hoped could have joined, this session is recorded and it will be made open to the public. Toleen will also be sharing a toolkit of information that you can download as a free resource tool.
Yeah.
But if you are interested in being coached by Toleen, she is open to doing that as well. So yes. I highly recommend that too. Toleen, thank you. This was great, and really a great pump.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Our pleasure. Take care and enjoy the rest of your evening. And thank you everyone for attending too.
You too.
All right.
Good night, everyone. Take care. Bye.